That was a great beginning. Here we are, episode 28, Rebel Therapy Podcast, coming to you from Picton today. Would you like to see my beautiful landscape? And it's snowing November 10th. That's not great. Although I keep talking to people who are like, it's so pretty. And I'm like, yep, sure. Anyway, that's just my own issues. It's fine. But it leads into what we were going to talk about today, which is misunderstandings around control. What can we control? What can we not control? What did you want to call it, Michelle?
Misunderstanding about the realities of relational contact, which is a bit of a mouthful and maybe not that approachable, but
We'll workshop it. Wow. I think we're talking about the same sort of thing. It made me think about this originally because it started snowing yesterday and I was in deep denial about this actually happening. And for those people who don't actually live in Toronto, this is not normal. We do not get snowfall on the 10th of November. 2 days ago, it was 10 degrees. So it's a bit shocking. Some people love it and bless them for loving it. That's wonderful. I am not one of those people. First, I have to come to terms with it because I have to accept that this is what's happening. I can't change it. That's true. I'm down with that. But somehow if I just change my mindset around it, if I look at the positive, like all these people I see who are like, it's so pretty. If I can just focus on that, somehow I will not be impacted by the fact that I'm trudging around the city with snow in my boots, flying into my face, cursing and cold and awful, right? And so that came up as we were talking. It's a bit of a pet peeve of mine. It comes up with clients all the time. And I have these amazing, well-intentioned clients who are clearly doing their best. And they'll say things like, I'm really focusing on detachment. Thumbs up, detachment's great. And I'm really focusing on the things that I can't control and the things that other people are doing. I can't control them. But, I really shouldn't be impacted. I feel like I shouldn't be bothered. I don't want to give my power away when somebody does a thing to me. I should be able to just not be affected by it. And I go into myself and have a little moment and then come back out again and say, I hear you, I get it. That's not realistic though, right? And the silly example I always use is if I'm in a room and somebody comes up to me and punches me in the face, chances are it's got nothing to do with me. It's their own shit, but they've just punched me in the face. And so to intellectually understand that it's not my issue, that it's their issue and it's not personal, that's nice, but I've still been punched in the face. So to expect myself not to be impacted by this is insane. Thoughts?
well, that was a lot.
I know. I might edit some of that out, but anyway.
I'm just trying to be like, okay, do I talk about the snow aspect of it or the relational aspect of it? Yes, when I think about that visceral example of someone punching you in the face and you expecting yourself not to be impacted, no, that doesn't make any sense. As you were saying before, it's like we sometimes get figuratively or emotionally punched in the face, and then we expect like, oh,
I was metaphorically.
no, I know. But when you're talking about that example, it helps me to picture it physically happening.
Yeah.
Because that's often energetically how big it can feel, right?
Yes. Yes.
And so, yes, maybe you can eventually come to the conclusion or detachment that that wasn't about you, allow it to be their own shit. But you also have to first be like, holy shit, I got punched in the face. That really hurt.
Yeah. Or shocked me. Or surprised me.
Yeah, it's like you feel taken aback and it rattles you. I think that can be such a painful, uncomfortable experience that oftentimes you want to skip over the feeling of that, right? You want to be like, okay, that happened, whatever, and just move on to, oh, okay, well, it wasn't about me and whatever. But you have a black eye and it hurts and you have to deal with the swelling. It's not something that fades quickly. I think that is really difficult when it is something metaphorical or figurative where you're not going to see a physical bruise from it, but you're actually internally bruised emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you care for that?
Yeah, this often comes up in the context of legacy relationships, people talking about relationships with either long-term friends, partners, or more commonly family members. If a new person metaphorically punched me in the face, we probably wouldn't talk again. But if it's my family member and this is the dynamic that has existed between us for 30 years and they happen to be related to me and I do love them, it gets more complicated. It comes up when people are talking about, or I'm talking to people about, I want to keep this person in my life to a certain extent, but they're not actually safe for me. So what can
Yeah.
I control? What can I not control? Sometimes I'll use the example of a room of poisoned air. I was asked, what's the safest place to be? Michelle, what's the safest place to be if you're contemplating a room full of poisoned air?
Not in it.
There you go, not in it. Exactly. But in this example, maybe you need to go into that room. Maybe there are very legitimate reasons that you need to keep going into the room. So then I would say, okay, really, you try to mitigate how much time you spend in the room. Be careful about your exposure time, I think. And then every time you go into the room, you've got to wear some armor or a gas mask. The analogy's kind of falling apart, but you get my point, right? The idea that you would walk into this room with no protective gear at all doesn't make any sense. And so if you're hanging out with somebody who is not emotionally safe for you for various reasons, yet you do want them in your life, it doesn't make sense to walk in vulnerable and unarmored, right? And so that's where like the being punched in the face kind of thing comes up, right? So it's learning how to keep yourself safe as possible, but you're still going to be impacted by whatever the bullshit is that they bring to the table. Whatever is dysfunctional about that relationship or dynamic, it's still going to impact you. You take it in the moment because you've decided that it makes sense for whatever reason. But then when you walk away, that's when you regain that balance.
It's like being very clear that this person isn't safe for you. Sometimes
Yeah.
it takes people a while to gain that awareness, especially with family, because they're like, no, this person loves me. I love them.
And they probably do. They probably
And
do.
and
Right?
it shouldn't be that way.
That's right.
So I think coming to terms with, okay, this is not a safe person or safe environment for me, but I still want to engage with them sometimes. And so what do I have to do so that it's like the least awful possible? And what do I have to do afterwards so that I recover quickly or recover as well as I
Beautiful.
can? And it's hard to know because, like you said, every relational dynamic is different. One
Mhm.
might be like a poisoned air room, and the other one might be like an ocean you're about to drown in. Someone can recognize that maybe the other person is quite limited in certain capacities and actually are trying their best and they're still hurting you. And that is
Yes.
painful.
What that brings up for me is how do you maintain a relationship with somebody who's battling an addiction, for example?
Mm.
And I can imagine that is probably resonant with a lot of people, whether it's an addiction, dependency, unprocessed, unhealed trauma, whatever it is, keeping people stuck and unable to meet you fully, um, mental illness, whatever else. How do you accept the love that they're offering, but protect yourself from the danger? And I think it can be very murky with the water kind of analogy or rocky. It's not easy. And I think you have to fumble a little bit, right? Part of this for me is it's not as clear cut as all that, right? I think that it's a little bit of trial and error. And this is where staying really connected with yourself and how you're feeling so that you can sort of feel the impact of those punches is incredibly invaluable. If I know how far I'm being pushed, I know when to call it, I know when to back up, I know when to leave, I know when to move forward. I can protect myself much better as long as I am focused on myself, actually. Sort of counterintuitively, you sort of want to focus on the person who's doing the punching, but they're totally out of your control. What you can control is knowing that they might punch you and how you're doing given your interactions.
Yes, and that kind of goes back to what I was saying at the beginning, like the actual reality of the relationship. I do
Yeah.
think there is a misconception, especially that we've been fed by media in our lives, like this idea that if you love someone and someone loves you, you should be open to them completely, be
Yeah.
able to embrace each other fully. Don't be guarded and keep trying again. Maybe they didn't hear you this time, but like keep trying, And it's like maybe that's
No.
valuable in certain circumstances, but there are times where it's like that doesn't make sense anymore. You've tried what you can and you're
Yes.
actually just at a place where you said you have to mitigate. And that's not a great word. No one wants to be like, let's go into this relationship and mitigate the shit out of it. Like that's
Yeah,
not
the thing that comes up for me is this idea of really great mental health and not being conflict avoidant, stepping into conflict, building intimacy and hearing each other, all that stuff. That's great, except that it's predicated on there being agreements between you and this
Yeah.
other person. It comes up all the time in therapy, and we do it in therapy because there's an agreement that this is what we're focusing on. We're
Yeah.
all showing up in good faith, and this is what we're intending. But that's not true necessarily out in the world. And I think it's often not true when we're talking about legacy relationships that are based on so many old misunderstandings, assumptions, beliefs about the person, whatever. And people change at different rates and in different directions. Unless there's an explicit agreement between you, our first responsibility is always to keep ourselves safe. Because if we want to help anyone else, we have to be safe ourselves. If there isn't that agreement between you and the other person, then, showing up completely vulnerable and as your whole self is possibly not a wise decision, you know.
No, no, it isn't. It really isn't, even though that would maybe be what you would want, right? And I think that
Yes, of course.
there's a
Of
lot of
course.
grief in it, to like
Mhm.
let go of that hope or that ideal that that relationship will be a safe one, that they'll be able to meet you, that they'll be able to love you fully, and all of
Well,
that.
I would argue that just because this is a massive assumption that shows up in so many of my clients' conversations with my clients, that because it is this way right now, this is how it's going to be forever. It's like, no, no, this is how it is right now. So I think to your point, we have to acknowledge what is real and true in the moment. Where is the relationship right this minute? It doesn't necessarily mean that there's no change possible. I've been amazed by the change that has happened in certain of my relationships that I never anticipated could grow in the way that they did. Others that I thought would grow did not. So it's really about
Yeah.
what is actually happening versus what we wish were happening. And then we can still work toward whatever that better future is, but you got to know where you are before you try to go anywhere else.
Yes, and I liked what you said before. That word agreement is so important, like an explicit agreement or understanding between
Yeah.
you that you're both trying for this thing, right? It's so difficult if one person is kind of just reacting and not even understanding their impact on you, and you're maybe hiding it from them because that's part of the protection, as opposed
Yeah.
to being like, okay, we have this rocky relationship. This is how I'm impacted. How do we negotiate this and shift this in a way that it can work better for both of us? But it's like you both have to want to do that. And that is not always going to happen in a relationship.
I remember a family member that I'm extremely close with years ago. I remember speaking to them and saying, like, I've had all of these events in my life and things have changed. I think I went back to school and did this whole Gestalt thing and that changed everything. And I was like, I really want to talk about some of our past. And, it was sort of like a shared context or a shared history. And this person was like, I hear you. I respect what you're saying. I think that's amazing. I have no interest in doing that. And I'm like, okay, fair enough. So we didn't, right? Fast forward, I think about 5 years, there were a whole lot of things that happened in this person's life. And I remember they came back to me and they're like, do you remember that conversation we had like 5 years ago? And I'm like, oh yeah, I do. And they're like, I'm ready now. I'd like to have those conversations now. And I'm like,
Mm,
amazing. Let's do it. And it was so
yeah.
great. Right. And it didn't mean
Yeah.
that we couldn't be close in the ensuing 5 years. I asked for something they could not, in good faith, give me at that time. So I chose to meet them where they were. We maintained our lovely relationship for 5 years. When they were ready, we were able to go a lot deeper and it changed everything. Don't give up. There's always the potential for movement, I think.
I think that's a really uplifting place to end on. Like the idea
Mm.
of like why you might keep somebody in your life that doesn't always feel
Mhm.
safe or you're not able to fully connect because there's hope there and
Yeah.
you both hold it in different ways. And the fact that it can shift and they can meet you the way you want it to be met, like that's just lovely.
Yeah, it was amazing. I did not know that I would end this, or we would end this session in such a hopeful place as I'm staring out. I guess it is a beautiful place that I'm looking at, beautiful Picton. It would be more beautiful without the snow, but anyway, good things happen. Good things happen.
They
You can
do.
always be
They do.
surprised.
People
And if you
can
want to hear
surprise you.
more, yeah, and if you want to hear more good things that are about to happen, please like and subscribe and stay with us. We love it. Okay.
Bye.